Hello, friends. Hello, Asaf. Hello, Chris behind the
Hello.
scenes. Hello,
Hello,
hello to
everyone.
everyone. So,
Yes.
just give a technical update. We, as everyone knows, had some internet issues stemming from the Middle East the last 2 weeks. We think we are resolved. If we have any issue today, we will be down for a minute or two. We have a plan B in place, and then we will move over to just the Kabbalahinfo YouTube page, right, Asaf?
Yes. So that
Okay,
will, if we
that's
might
plan
have a
B.
hiccup for a minute or two, and then the broadcast will move to a different computer,
And
and
if you're already,
yeah.
yeah, okay. And if you're there already, just stay there and we'll be good. So,
Yes.
from micro problems to macro, or micro questions to macro questions. Well, welcome to the Great Transition, where we're looking at the conversations going on in the world, the events going on in the world through the lens of the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. This wisdom comes to us from thousands of years ago, was discovered by people first in Mesopotamia over there, and turned into, after a couple 20 generations or so, into a real method, and brought to people, anybody. It's not something that was given to one genetic people, one color of people, one size of people, but anybody looking for answers. And it's had somewhat of a run over the last few thousand years, until it made it to us, where now, thanks to the internet and all kind of other things that are happening, it's open to everyone. So
Yes.
now we get to look at this whole world, like flip over the back of the embroidery and see all the connections between everything. And that's what we're doing here. Today, we're going to explore something very interesting because it's so pragmatic. Anyway, it's science. That's what we're talking about, which is really fun for us because we're talking about something that we can't really, in the wisdom of Kabbalah, we're talking about this reality where everyone is connected to everything all of the time, and we're have in a reality that's just filled with endless fulfillment. But nevertheless, we all feel pretty much isolated, alone, scared,
Mm.
confused, worried, and unfulfilled. So when we get to talk about something that's like we talked about Squid Games, okay, fine. But if we get to talk about something like we get to talk about today, the Big Bang,
Mm.
this has measurements, very, very clear measurements that we can look at. So today we're going to talk about this Big Bang. For a long time, scientists had this theory that 14 billion years ago, all of matter was collapsed into a very, very, very small area and then exploded in all directions evenly and has continued to expand. There are other theories. There didn't just come out, but there are other theories, such as the Big
Hmm.
Bounce, that there was a compression and then an expansion.
Yeah.
So we want to look at these things. We want to see, what do we learn. What does the wisdom of Kabbalah have to say about these things? Why are Kabbalists even interested in talking about such a thing? Most importantly, what is the universe that we are looking at?
Yes.
Kabbal- Yeah, right. So if Kabbalists are saying that we're in some endless world of delight, like, give me a break, for real. Who feels that? Okay.
Yeah.
Everything is just endless light. Where? Show me. I want to, I want to believe you, but put something down on the table. So they say
Hmm.
we're in a reality. There is no, we're in a reality above time and beyond space. We're one created being. Um, there we have to explain this. We have to
Yes.
explain what
Yes.
this means,
Yes.
and
We do. We
we
do.
want to, yeah, and we want to kind of look at both of these things, because everything that's going on in this world that we're perceiving started somewhere and has been moving in a certain direction. Kabbalists are talking about this round. That's very linear. The Kabbalists are talking about this kind of round, with no borders, just this endlessly round,
Mm.
full, everything equal, no top, no bottom. So what's really interesting to me, and I hope to you, is that I see in this country
Yeah.
huge division between the left and the right. I
Sure.
see huge problems in families. I see big problems in health and in the media, and all kind of divisions everywhere. Um, and so what is this that we're seeing? What is reality? Why is it appearing this way? We need to be pragmatic
Mm,
about it. We're okay. So we're developing from some starting point. That's what the science is telling us. This Big Bang. The
yeah.
Kabbalists comes and say, "Oh, everything is just one." And meanwhile, in the middle here, we have
Right.
us living day
Okay.
to day, just
So, so
banging off of each other all the
so
time.
so the dissonance is how can the Kabbalists describe some reality where we're all one, everything's one, there's no space, there's no time, matter is not what we think it is, it's all one thing, eternal and whole, and yet I'm fighting with my neighbor, my country is fighting with our neighboring country, our societies are in a turmoil, really, in a conflict that never ends. There's a crisis of identity, like a clash of identities these days. It's much less about um, here's another empire that's going to take over this or that territory. Today, you can be we're so conflicted that it's about ideals and values, and it's around race and color and gender and political views. We can get so polarized, everyone with their
Hmm.
own picture of reality, their own perception of what's right or wrong or real or not real. There's a real debate today about what it means to be a human being, male, female, black,
Right.
white,
Very
yellow.
interesting.
It's
There's this
very, yeah.
the diff-
Reality is not as clear as it used to be.
the debates now are even about science, right? Like, is the climate is the scientists is the science in on climate change? Is climate change real? Of course, the climate is changing, but is it because of man, or we can look and see the planet was once ice, and it was once fire, and it was once covered in gas, and it was once covered in this. Is it because so the science is
Hmm.
people are conflicted about the science. People are conflicted about gender. Is gender from nature? Is gender a social construct? It's like even the things we kind of relied on are people are disagreeing on. We
Yeah,
can't really
exactly.
agree on anything. Before, okay, fine. So this religion was going to fight against this religion. I said God is like this, and you say God is like this, and let's fight it out and see whose God is stronger.
All
And
right.
this happened everywhere around the world. But today, even things that are like
And you said even in science, and that's exactly related to the Big Bang. Like why did we say, okay, let's talk about this from a Kabbalistic perspective? Because now, for a while actually, it's now getting more attention, but science is now saying, well, actually, we're not that so sure about the Big Bang. There's actually maybe it wasn't really a Big Bang. Maybe it was a big bounce, like you said. Yeah. So everything's in question. As we evolve, we seem to have more questions about what is real, what is not, what is right, what is not, who we are, and what is the experience that we're having. Um, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I want to say 3 weeks, I am having an affair, a WhatsApp affair with
sounds interesting. You can do a
with
whole nother show about that.
with our friend physicist Dr. Meir Shimon, and he's a real physicist. Is doing this for over 30 years, and he's actually working. He's making a living. The guy is making a living, getting paid to paying his bills by working on a model that explains how the universe began. So what's a that's kind of a cool job when you think about it. Anyway, we've been having like a WhatsApp affair. So basically, we're sending each other messages.
Texting each other in the middle of the night about the origins of the
It's
universe.
exactly, and it's more
I
like
can't believe you're
audio.
cheating on me.
It's audio
I heard about a
messages.
30-minute audio message.
Yes, we've been.
I thought I
it's
was
a
your only one.
it starts from, hey, so let's talk about time, and then you go with and then he responds with like, okay, well, 30-minute audio message, and it's a very cool relationship. We are um above time and space, everyone at his own time, leaving each other audio messages and discussing the purpose of existence, and more specifically the the structure of reality. And it's a very interesting discussion that's going on between us, between like physics and Kabbalah. So it's really cool. So that's the kind of background I'm coming to this conversation with.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, the conversation is so wide. I was in Mexico not too long ago, and I saw um, amazing artifacts in this museum in Mexico City about thousands-year-old civilizations there who were measuring astrological phenomenon, who had developments in science. We know that there was great civilizations in Egypt, right? Maybe one day we'll talk about what is the the civilization that maybe fell into the ocean, or there's all these great ancient civilizations, but it's not, it's kind of too broad. I think what we want to do
Mm-hmm.
here is like zoom ahead, zoom ahead, zoom ahead, zoom ahead until um, what let's start with, like Galileo, like modern physics, things that we used to actually build these telescopes, measure
Mm.
all these things, right? So what is that, 600 years ago or so?
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
Okay, so something changes in humanity, and all of a sudden people start asking themselves. This is what was at the heart of people like Copernicus, Galileo, all that kind of stuff, is asking these questions. What is going on here? Who am I? Today, if
Mm-hmm.
scientists asked those questions, they would be called philosophers and kind of dismissed. But these were the questions
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah. Everything started from asking, science started from philosophy. Philosophy essentially was the basis of science, of inquiry. Let's research reality. It's just that there was less tools and technology to do it, and so they mostly used, the ancient Greeks were just using a form of like dialectics, questions and answers. Let's think about it. Let's discuss it and explore it with our rational mind. I happened to study philosophy for 2 years before Kabbalah, many years ago, actually, as a high school student. That we had a special program. It was fascinating to me. It was naturally what I was drawn to in philosophy was two branches, like I can't remember, logic, I think it was called, one branch of it, and the other was meaning of life. Anyway, um,
I remember also
so
my first
yeah.
semester at university. I took philosophy and the existence of God. I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was 1992, and I was like, finally, I made it out of my small town. I made it to like a big university, and now we can finally like sit and discuss the questions of life. And I
All
wanted to
right.
just jump out of the window by the end of the semester, because you're just, this one argues this thing and he argues this, but there's no answer. There's no way to actually get
Right.
to anything.
So yeah, so I think that the kind of like the point you're talking about is where science began to separate from philosophy. So essentially, yeah, you could say that science in application, in its empirical method of doing things, I guess kind of exists for only 600, 700 years, something like that. It's a fairly new phenomenon in the human civilization, if you think
So,
about.
so is Galileo the father of modern physics? Is that
Maybe. I guess it's
okay?
debatable, but I
So,
guess you
so,
could
so
say, yeah,
without listen,
modern
neither
science. Yeah, the modern
wh-
scientific method. You can say that, I
when
guess. Yeah,
Mayer has his confidence about English, maybe we can bring him on here as an
sure.
actual professional physicist. You and I are not actually professional physicists, so we
Yeah,
will
no,
stay.
nor are we trying to be, but it is interesting from a Kabbalistic perspective to look at human development, and you have to include that, of course. Yeah.
So let's move through this conversation in a light way, just observing it from a distance, and where we have the kind of authority to speak about it, we will, and where we don't, we'll just talk about what is accepted. So,
Let's ask this, maybe. Let me
okay.
propose a question that to kind of and tell me if that fits the direction of where you thought to take the conversation. So you said in the beginning, you mentioned how Kabbalists describe the ultimate reality, the complete perception of reality, is where everything's one, there's no separation. Reality is one whole eternal being, and it's above time, it's above space. Um, and so maybe let's ask, where is science in relation to that? Or what path did science go through, from where it started to where it is today, and how is there any correlation between this Kabbalistic picture of reality and what science is finding?
Yeah,
Is
we
that
need to.
okay?
I'm not
Okay.
really interested in anything that doesn't give me results. I'm
Mm,
not interested in theories and philosophies. Um, so yeah, so let's start to piece it together. So you have classical physics. It's basically like a billiard table. It's like if I know where the balls are and I
hmm.
know with what force I hit this ball
Yes.
and for what angle I hit this ball, I can tell the future. I can tell you in 30 seconds where every ball will end up, right? So there is some objective reality. This is the beginning of classical physics. There's some objective reality that's outside of me. It's there on the
Hmm.
table.
Yeah.
And there's a set of laws that operate there. And if I know these laws, then I know, how that works. Is that more or less
Yeah,
that model?
so now we're basically saying, okay, let's look at this is about 350 years ago. Newton, he articulates the three laws of motion. He is considered the father of modern physics. The um, it definitely comes up in the conversations between me and Meir as that. Anyway, he basically describes reality in a completely new way. He gives us laws that describe how this reality works. And in this picture of reality, yes, time is absolute. The building blocks of reality are these localized particles, like bits of matter. That's what makes up reality. It exists whether we are there to measure it or not. It's an objective reality that exists outside of us. Like you said, if you know all the forces that are working on a golf ball or a basketball, you can tell where it's going to be. And it doesn't need us to be there to measure it. It just exists. Time is an absolute thing, yeah, and reality is localized particles of matter, bits of matter. That's the picture of reality 350 years ago. That
If there was
has
a
that went through
if there
some changes until
Yeah,
today.
so
Yeah.
if there's a big concert at a stadium and my job is to sell t-shirts there. So I don't even care about going in to see the stage. I'm interested in hanging out. As long as I stay at my table outside, I'm selling t-shirts. If I walk into that concert hall and I'm the musician, first thing I do is I walk up to that stage. I see what it's going to look like. How's the sound going to be? So basically, depending on who the person is and what they want out of the situation, they're asking the questions based on that. So we talked about Galileo and Newton. They had a reality they were perceiving, right? They were selling T-shirts in the hall, and then comes Einstein. He says, "Wait a second, I got a different question. I want to because if he didn't have the question, he wouldn't have kind of discovered his next." Oh, are we having an issue?
I
Are we
think
having a
we
technical issue?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we should probably switch
Hold on, I see.
a
Um,
broadcast system, or maybe it'll resolve itself in a second. I just don't want to keep our viewers in a buffering mode. Um,
oh,
can anyone tell us? I see Julie says it's buffering. Can anyone tell us how bad is it? Should we have two options: to continue like this, or to limit the broadcast to Kabbalahinfo, and everyone goes there, and we should have a smooth broadcast happening there. A YouTube Kabbalahinfo YouTube channel. So yeah, I see Azriel says it's buffering as well. Let's do the switch. Let's do the switch and keep going. We can do it fairly quick. What do you say?
um, okay, whatever
Yeah?
you want.
Or um okay. So
So we're gonna switch to just Kabbalah info now,
one
YouTube.
second. 1 second. Let's try First of all, let's try this. Okay, we are still on YouTube. We are the Facebook. Our friends on Facebook should go to. We can stay the way we are right now. Without Facebook, we
Okay.
are good.
So we're on
yeah.
on YouTube at the Kabbalahinfo channel right now,
Yes.
right? That's the main. Okay, good. Nicholas says he has buffering every 10 seconds. Sandy says it's fine. Hussein says it's okay. Okay, so
Yeah,
we're
it
gonna
looked
keep
like
rolling here.
yeah. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep. If
Okay,
we have
thanks
to
for everyone
change,
for.
we'll change it. Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's hang in there. Okay, so Einstein comes along, and he's asking some new questions. And Funny Games has buffering every few seconds. Steve in Norway says it's okay. Okay, we're gonna keep rolling us off until you, Chris. Maybe you can monitor also what's going on out there, and then we can, if we need to make a change, just let us know. So Einstein comes along, and he's got some different questions.
Yeah.
There was an objective reality outside of me. If I know the laws of that objective reality, I can start to understand everything that's happening. But Einstein, he comes with relativity.
Right.
He starts. So what does he tell us?
Okay, so that's really cool. What's starting to happen? So Einstein is, well, he 120 years ago, I guess, was his main. I mean, he did a lot. I'm not pretending to be the one who covers, everything that Einstein did, but he revolutionized physics. But let's just take one thing. Let's just focus on one thing that makes it really relevant for us. So, yes, the theory of relativity, and more specifically special relativity, changes the relationship between space and time. So space and time, which used to be absolute, time was an absolute thing, and space is relative, because of course it depends on where you measure space, right? You can start measuring from each point, from a different frame of reference. So now what Einstein does is he brings space and time together. They become an interdependent concept. They become one thing, space-time. And so that also means that time, just like space, becomes relative. Now, just instead of just talking about it in high language, very simply, this means that if you are traveling away from me, and you're traveling fast enough, I will age a lot faster. And if you were to WhatsApp me every couple of seconds, I would see you just staying almost as young. And by the time a minute has passed for you, because you're traveling really fast, then I might be 70-year-old by then. So time became a relative concept. Even more than that, his equations show you that you can travel. If you have the technology to build a spaceship that can do that, you can travel for a couple months into space, travel really fast. He tells you how fast exactly you need to travel, so that when you get back, you'll step out of the spaceship and see what's going on planet Earth in 1,000,000 years from now. So yes, time travel is also possible, at least into the future. Into the past, it's already more complicated.
We don't have the spaceship that can do it, but the concept
right, and there's also
of the
a
math
question
is
of
there.
yes, and there's also a question of what will happen to our biology when we're under these such
Moving
forces.
that fast, yeah.
But the math allows it, the physics allows it. And so time suddenly became a relative thing, which is not like what Newton said. It's no longer absolute, right? So this and many other things that Einstein did are changing what we know about reality, what we think of reality, how we perceive reality. And that, can I just go forward with? Okay, so that leads us, I think, to maybe I can see that there's still more buffering. I don't know if oh, they're saying it's fine. I can see it on my end. Can someone give us just tell us if this is good enough? I don't want us to just go um, if the broadcast is not working. Okay, I think it's probably fine. A lot of people said it's working fine. Sorry. Where were we? Time travel.
Okay, we started out with classical physics, then we got, where there's an objective world outside of me. Then
We
we layered on
started from
top of that
asking what is our reality? Let's even put it like that. And what do we
okay.
know about our reality? And 350 years ago, we thought reality is just this objective thing that exists outside of us, built from matter, tiny bits of matter. It exists whether we are here to measure it or not. And that's what we have. Now comes Einstein and does a lot of things that revolutionize physics, but one of the big ones is space-time and the fact that time is relative. Yeah. Then we should make the jump to talk about quantum mechanics.
You have to. It's the next step.
Yeah, and of course, I gotta put a disclaimer here. This came up also in our conversation in our WhatsApp affair with me and a physicist, Meir Shimon. There's obviously, because of the weird nature of quantum mechanics and the interesting and freaky questions that it brings up. There's a lot of all kind of woo-woo talk about it, where all kinds of people just say quantum next to anything they wanna add to it just to make it sound I don't know, interesting or spiritual or trippy or something. But really, it's a science. It that follows the scientific method, and it's just that the findings are revolutionary and are very interesting, and we don't yet know how to explain them. And that's a I think an important thing to put across. Where do we go now?
Okay, so I want to continue stacking this because Einstein wouldn't have been able um, to do what he did without having the tools that he received from the previous generation of scientists. And then after Einstein, so you take these tools and you try and now, you can't build an internet until you have a computer. You can't build a
Right.
computer until you have electricity. So
Yes.
there's these kind of sequential processes that we are finding ourselves in. So we had classical physics. There's some objective reality. Comes Einstein and says, no, hold on a second. Time and space are connected and they're malleable. They change depending on,
The
okay,
relative, yeah.
they're relative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're not fixed. And then now on top of that, we get to this next level. I guess what are the big questions
The big
that
questions.
what are the big questions that led to the
Mm-hmm.
next discoveries? And specifically, if you can figure out how to get us to the difference, I guess the main difference, we have to talk about the double slit experiment. Chris, if you can find something to show us there, because we need to talk about, this is where things start to get into woo-woo land, and it starts to allow us to, the Kabbalists, what they said to us, the world was created in 7 days. There was Adam, there was Eve, there was Abraham. If you read it without all of those levels of preparation before, so that's a storybook. But if you have the,
Yeah, if you think a day is an astronomical day, if you think Adam and Eve are walking on two human bodies, then
right,
yeah.
what is the sin? What is the snake? What are all these things? But if you have all of these prior preparations that the scientists gave you from the previous generations, now you can really build something out of this, and you're understanding it in a totally different way. So now we need to get. So what happens is the Kabbalists said something, but if we didn't have preparations, if we didn't have an inner system built inside of us to understand these things, like I said before, I'm not interested in theory. I'm not interested in philosophy. I want to attain these things. I want to feel these things.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what that is. I want to understand what is the meaning of my life and what's going on here. So I want to digest what these people are giving us. So
Right.
now what's happening through science
Mm-hmm.
is the more science progresses, it actually allows us to start understanding with inside our mind and inside our feelings what is the
It
actual nature of the reality.
I think and you know what, we'll get into some quantum mechanics things also based on my conversations with May. Some interesting things came up because I'm coming to the conversation from a Kabbalistic perspective, and he's coming to it from a physicist perspective. It's an interesting thing that happens. I'll get to it in a second, but I think what we're seeing, if we're starting to put this historical picture together, these milestones of our understanding of reality through the development of physics, one thing becomes evidently clear, abundantly clear. We cannot trust our senses. We do not really know that the reality we see is what appears to our eyes. The reality we hear is what appears to our membrane. We don't really know. We thought time is one thing. Now it appears to be something totally different. And now with discoveries from quantum mechanics, that just changes the world upside down. Okay, so let's go into so obviously probably the most famous series of experiments in quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the double slit experiments. So we talked about it a lot. May and I, was a really fun conversation. Yeah, Chris, it would be good if you can find just something, maybe just a Wikipedia thing, just to show what we're talking about, because maybe not all of our viewers are familiar with this. And of course, we're not going to explain this on the level of detailed
We do
level of
need,
a physicist, but just to understand what
we
they
do
got
need,
from it, the conclusions.
but
Yeah,
we
well,
need to get into, just make sure you get to particle and wave, because now then we
right.
start to really get to the next level of perception.
Right. So this is the first, I would say, like the first big thing that comes from these double slit experiments. So essentially, what's the double slit experiments? They take you take some beam that you can shoot, that shoots an electron, like or a photon. Let's start from there, and you shoot it through a screen with two slits. And then what you expect to see, if you're shooting particles, is on the back of the screen. I'm just waiting for a visual from Chris that will help us here. There we go.
Okay, so you're shooting, what are you shooting here?
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so let's say you're shooting particles of light, as we call them, photons. Okay, so if you're shooting particles through two slits, just like in the classical world, this is what you would expect to see, right? Like two little balls, tiny little bits of matter. You're shooting them, and then on the screen in the back, you're going to see two stripes. This means that you're shooting particles, and you're shooting one after the other through one of the two slits. Ultimately, you'll see two stripes, which represent those particles hitting the back screen. Okay, so far so good. But this is not what happens on the quantum level. At the subatomic level, when you shoot light into these two slits, through these two slits to a screen in the back, you don't get two stripes. What you get, and Chris, please find the relevant visual, something we can show. What you see instead is something called an interference pattern, which basically means that, I hope Chris will find something for us. Yeah, exactly. That's great. What you see, okay, we can't, now we see. Okay, so what you see on the screen there, it's not two stripes, it's many stripes. The highest intensity is at the center, and then as you go off to the sides, the intensity weakens. And that is called an interference pattern, and that's exactly what you would expect to see when a wave passes through the two slits. Therefore, it interferes with itself. It creates something called a constructive interference pattern together with a destructive one, and that gives you this pattern of stripes. In short, the interference pattern creates these stripes on the back screen. So this is the first thing that happens with the double slit experiments. Is this: they shoot photons through two slits, and they see that. Yes, and they see that, meaning that the particles are not at the quantum level. They don't actually behave like particles. They behave like a wave. Now, again, I had a long conversation with Meir about what is a wave and what's the difference between wave and a particle. That's a long conversation we shouldn't get into now, but a wave...
Give a very, very, just so we all understand.
First of all, a wave is a disturbance spread out in space. It's not localized.
So if there's a pond of water and I drop a rock,
exactly,
in it, right? The
exactly.
water stays where it is, but this water pushes that water, which pushes that water, which pushes that water, which pushes that water, and it makes a wave go through.
Yes. So what you see, you don't actually see the wave. We can't see any wave. We can only detect its influence as it travels through a certain medium that we can observe. So the water, in the case of water waves, is a medium for the water waves.
So if you drop a rock in water,
that screen where you see the stripes is like the medium that the wave of light passes through as it goes through the two slits and leaves those marks. So
hold on a second.
Yeah.
If you drop a rock, for example, it causes some resulting energy movement, and that energy movement, in the case of a pond, is passing through the medium of water, and so your visual representation of the energy moving through the water is seeing the ripples of the pond.
Yes, and these
so this is waves.
So we have waves,
in order to have,
and they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
In order to have a wave, you need to have a medium. Otherwise, it's not detectable at all. So if there's a medium there, then you can measure the wave passing through that medium.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. We measure the effects of the wave on the medium that it's traveling through. Yes.
Okay. So really, so let's keep going.
Okay. So finding number one, let's say, and again, we're just doing this, kind of like from zooming out and just kind of seeing what physicists have found in general. This is, of course, there's you could go into years of studying this in detail and the mathematics of it and all that. But basically what they're seeing is this: on the quantum level, particles, first it was just with light. Light behaves not like a particle, but like a wave. Then later on, this is already started with De Broglie, came into the picture, and another scientist who was involved in this, and he said, okay, maybe it's not just light, maybe it's happening with all particles. And it turns out that when you shoot electrons, for instance, through the two slits, you get the same result, an interference pattern. So what happens is that at the quantum level, again and again, we see that what we expect to behave as particles, they don't behave like particles.
When you say quantum level, what you mean is when you
subatomic
very small level.
Yes,
right.
Very
That's
small.
What it means.
Meir can tell you 10 to the minus how many that means. Very, very small. Very small. In the tip of a needle, you'd have a few billions, I think, of electrons. So that gives you a sense of how small that is.
If you had really, really strong eyes, you would see a different world than we see with our normal eyes.
Yes, exactly. That's the first thing we see from here. If you and I were buddies, just like we are now, but we were also electrons, then you and I would be looking at each other as electrons, and we would not see each other as two localized bodies with a certain mass and a certain place, point in time and space. We would be smeared across across a variation of states, and in fact, ultimately, each particle is smeared through across the whole universe. So that's because ultimately this is what's going on. This is I'm quoting my physicist friend now. So this is again, they found that it happens not just with light, with all kinds of particles. So what this tells you is that matter is not what we thought it was. So all of a sudden you go, wait a minute.
Hold on.
Okay.
Matter is what we thought it was from a certain gross level of perception. Gross not meaning disgusting. Gross like from a very, very coarse,
like a rough,
dense,
like coarse, yeah.
rough level of perception.
Yes.
It is exactly what we thought it was. But if we want to move to a spiritual perception, to a different perception, if we're, wow. Oh, Chris, can you show for 1 second? Just indulge me for a second. That monkey little thing I sent you this morning.
Let's just do, as we're doing this, I see the buffering thing is back. I don't know how much is a disturbance it is, but I do see it's happening. We're gonna go. Let's just we're not gonna change the whole broadcast system, but let's just stay on Kabbalahinfo. So please, if anyone's watching us, whoever's watching us on the other channels, just go to Kabbalahinfo's YouTube channel now. Okay, let's just do that. All right. Yes. Okay.
Okay, we there?
Let's keep going, yeah.
Okay, so Chris, do you have that handy by chance? So if we are looking at reality from our normal look at this. This is incredible. Play this.
What a cutie.
Look how much he looks like a person.
Yeah, the movement of the eyes that reflects thinking. This guy represents thinking. Yeah, it's yeah. Mm-hmm.
Steve Williams.
Yeah, he's got an amazing Twitter feed. He did all kind of incredible stuff in nature. But we are so similar to those monkeys. So when we start, from our monkey self perceiving, monkey plus self, start perceiving reality. That's what it is. I got a stick here. I got a banana here. I bang it against this. Something happens. But as we start using our mind and using our heart, which are thousands of times more powerful than any material power we have, we start to be able to penetrate into reality. So when you said before, matter's not actually what it is. No, matter is what it is if we're perceiving it as a monkey. But if we start becoming closer and closer to this Adam, to this level that's this, towards this spiritual form that we're moving towards, then we start to be able to perceive reality in a different way. So now let's jump back to what's happening as we, as humanity, are moving towards this, and we start seeing reality through these new minds and hearts. What are we seeing now about the nature of reality?
Back to the quantum mechanics world?
Yes.
So, okay, so the first thing is, yes, particles are not what we thought they were. Matter is not what we discover.
Matter is what it is as a monkey, but as we move forward away,
yes, we are discovering the limitations of our senses. That is something.
Well, let's say it different. Mm-hmm. Those senses were good monkey senses, but now we are developing.
I didn't say good or bad. I'm just saying limited. That's you're seeing. Okay. You're seeing that really what you see is not what you think it is, and that has to do with matter, time, space, motion. all the building blocks of our reality in the last within like 300 years, I would say, have been altered. Um, yeah.
Touch on one more scientific point
So
about quantum entanglement here. What's going on
I'm
there? Because
still left hanging with the double slit. What do we take away
yeah,
from that?
we actually just talked about one. I would say there's two big aspects about it. One is that, you see at the quantum level, the particles behave like waves. We've shown that. So matter is not what we thought it was. It's actually something else. But then there's something even weirder. So the scientist said, what is it? What happens that makes the electron, right? Like electron, it's super small, you can't see it, but you can hold it in your hand. You're probably holding some sort of electron in your hand right now, right? So we think about it. It is something that intuitively we understand. It's very small, but it's a tiny, tiny, tiny localized bit of matter that we can throw through a slit, right? How does that all of a sudden at the subatomic level becomes a wave? What is happening there? What is causing the transition? And so scientists said, okay, let's put a detector right before, I don't know if Chris can easily find a visual for this online, but just imagine a detector that stands there. They tried all kinds of variations in these experiments, but let's say a detector that's right before the particle passes through the slits. So they added a detector and they wanted to see what happens exactly when the particle passes through the slits. How does it become a wave? And what happens is this: the moment there's a detector there, there's no wave. The wave stops acting as a wave. They call this the collapse of the wave function. So that wave, when you measure it, for some reason, it collapses and becomes a localized particle. And the result, you know that because the result on the back screen is just two stripes again, as if you would be shooting a particle. You take the detector away, the wave comes back. Interference pattern on the back screen. You put the detector again, only particles. This is called the measurement problem in physics. And there's several interpretations that scientists offer for it. I think about 8 interpretations, but it's an open question. No one really knows how that transition from wave to particle or vice versa happens, why the wave function collapses in physics language. No one knows how or why that happens. And that's where you want me to go, Chris.
Yeah, the crazy part about the whole experiment is that all of a sudden the fact that someone's watching or something is watching, that changes the entire outcome of the experiment. That never happened ever.
So now look at the cumulative effect. We didn't yet talk about quantum entanglement, which is also fascinating. Maybe it's the one last thing we should bring up if you want. But what you're seeing is that we said reality at first, right? Go back to Newton 350 years ago. So reality was perceived as something objective, material, outside of us. Time is absolute, and there's a bunch of separated bodies in space and time, and you can measure them and see what's going on. But then we see that, wait a minute, time is relative. Matter is not really what we thought it was. When you go to the quantum level, it becomes a wave. This objective reality that exists outside of us seemingly now seems to somehow correlate with our act of measuring it. And if we would go and talk about quantum entanglement, you'd see that none of the particles are actually never separated. They instantly know what's going on. One entangled particle knows what's going on with the other one
Well,
instantly.
for a minute, just to make that super clear, when you separate electrons, basically what quantum
What,
entanglement means,
entanglement? Yeah.
something happens here, and on some star all the way over there, there's an immediate result, meaning there's no distance between the cause and effect, right? They're happening together.
Yes, the you separate one, you separate
Like when
two
when my mom thinks about me, and I recognize right away, right?
you if you know what's happening to one, they measure it with measuring the spin. It doesn't really matter for us now, but that, yeah, it takes zero time for them to communicate, so to speak. And
Okay.
the explanation is that they were never separated. If
Meaning
y-
they were never separated, meaning
Meaning
they're
they are
all
one.
one, meaning they were
Exactly.
always all one. And it,
S-
okay, so
So
we
now
have,
go back to the Kabbalists' picture of reality.
okay,
Time
we,
doesn't exist. Material world just seems to us as a material world. It's not really, it's non-material. Space doesn't exist. Um, and everything is one.
so hold on. We're never,
Isn't
we're
that
never,
interesting? Yeah.
in all of these experiments with each of these scientists and each of these levels, right? We're not actually measuring. We talked about this one on the show before. When you're measuring weight, mass, you're not measuring the force. You're measuring the impact of the force on your measuring instrument, on
Right.
your scale, whatever. When you're not measuring, you're not actually perceiving the wave or the particle. You're seeing how it's moving through this medium and going onto the back wall. So if I was Newton or Galileo and I have a certain heart and mind and I can come up with a certain experiment and I have certain tools, then I can perceive reality in a certain way. And then as my tools become more developed and as I can think of more questions, not just the words of the questions, but what's behind that, all those feelings and insights and discernments behind that, now I start to uh, to have different kind of experiments, different kind of questions, and I'm perceiving that same reality in another way. And now we can get back to the Big Bang. We're gradually
Okay, I
discovering,
forgot about the Big Bang. Let's.
we're gradually discovering that we cannot separate the observer from what he's observing. Everything that we're measuring is based on Stephen Hawking's. There's no way to remove the observer, us, from our perception of the world. Incredible. So now we need the Kabbalists. Why? Why do we need them? Because we need to be able to perceive everything beyond time and space. I don't want to wait another 5 years till they make another telescope and another 10 years till they can, once we finally get the technology and raise enough money, then we can travel into the future, because it is possible. But we just need to spend a lot of money making this rocket ship and keeping me
Mhm,
stable with the pressure
mhm.
inside of it and everything like that. The Big Bang that we are perceiving is just that. That is how we are perceiving our reality.
Yes.
All
This is obviously the Kabbalistic answer to all of this. We are never seeing any reality outside of us. Everything that we are exploring and experiencing. So all of our life and all of our science is experiencing and investigating our own vessel of perception. We are researching our own modes of operation, our own way of thinking and feeling and perceiving. Now, this
not
is,
only not only researching but also developing so that we
yes,
can perceive.
and we're also developing. By the way, there's this there's this evolutionary perspective from bio. This is from biology actually, but it's kind of interesting that because you're you're touching on this aspect of developing, how we're developing in our perception of reality. So the there's an evolutionary from evolutionary biology a perspective that says that our perception is developing according to what will give us better chance for survival. But it recognizes that we are not seeing the whole reality, but we're seeing what's best for us to survive. And this is it's interesting that evolutionary biologists are seeing that, because it corresponds nicely with what Kabbalists explaining. Kabbalists explain that this what is happening is that we, if you will, are collapsing the wave function all the time because we are measuring reality all the time. And the way we measure reality all the time is according to a program that is built into us that immediately limits the whole of reality that we can perceive into a localized particle, so to speak. So the reality is a result of how our vessel, our perception, our sensory device to perceive reality, how it's structured. We perceive what we are. We perceive how we're built. Yeah.
Chris, you saying something? Bala Sulam, we just actually studied this article. What's the three bodies? Is that Shemati 35 or 36?
Yeah.
He says when your thoughts remain, so he describes the three bodies of the soul. He says when you are existing in these other ones and feeding all of that energy into these other ones, you are perceiving a reality up here. And when our attention, like a monkey, is towards the earth, that's when, as it says, you will eat bread by the sweat of your brow, meaning all of those processes of planting and sowing and reaping, they're all spiritual processes. And as if your energy, all of that heart and mind is in that, then you're moving through these as spiritual processes. And if your energy is down here, where it was as we were developing from monkeys, for example, then it turns into everything happening here, seeing a limited reality here.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the Big Bang, asking, going back to the question where we started from, asking whether the Big Bang happened or not. You know, when Kabbalist Rav Michael Leitman was asked, our teacher was asked that question 2 weeks ago, he said the question is irrelevant. Why? Because we are those who initially
see that,
perceive that there was some beginning that we call 14 billion years ago. What's 14 billion years ago? If you think about that, just the concept of it. We identify at some point in our evolution, we suddenly look back and say, it's probably 13.8 billion years ago with our current understanding. And if you look again, if you to go back to the point of developing perception, we are living and experiencing in a developing perception, right? 100 years ago, the universe was infinite. Then a few years after that, the universe was 4 billion years old. And today, the accepted theory is that it's 13.8 billion years ago. And and then you have scientists like our friend May, who's working on a model to explain why there was never a point of singularity, but actually a big bounce, a contracting universe that then became an expanding universe, as if the universe made a U-turn 14 billion years ago. Anyway, what are all these theories? It's us trying to understand our own perception. So when you ask, did this thing happen? If you think about it as happening outside of you, outside your perception, Kabbalists say the right way to look at reality is you have no idea. Outside of us, we have no idea what's going on. We just know that something, a formless unknown, Kabbalists call it abstract light, something is influencing us, and we interpret that influence as an experience. a material reality, or if you calibrate your vessel, as Kabbalists teach us how to do, you can begin to sense the same information that's surrounding you and that's influencing you. You can begin to sense it in a more sensitive way, just as you thought that matter is these bits of tiny localized particles, and then you developed more sensitive tools and discovered that it's actually a wave that has that could be in everywhere, that is smeared across the universe. Then in the same way, you're going to be able to recalibrate your vessel of perception and perceive reality, the same reality you're in right now, as something totally different. They call it above space, above time, where we're all one.
Chris, show us that soda can.
Yeah. Soda can. What soda can?
Yeah, watch this. Hold on a second. Okay, how about now? Can you show? Did the Big Bang happen is a question, right? Is this soda can red? Actually, there are no red pixels in this at all. There are no red pixels in this image. The red you're seeing is all in your mind. Thanks, Chris.
I love optical illusions. They totally drive home that point. How
so the Big Bang is, we see a red soda can there. That is what we see, right? And today, but if we zoom in, we'll see what's actually there. There were no red pixels in that picture. And the Big Bang is what we see today. That is how we see it. If we develop these senses of perception, as you were saying, we will perceive what the Kabbalists are telling us.
And one more point, because you brought up how in the beginning, how to make sense of all of the conflict and division and shattered perception that we're in. And if you think about the great transition that we're going through now, what Kabbalists refer to as the last generation, this process of human development that we're going through collectively, if you look at it through the prism of developing our perception of reality, then that becomes clear as well. Now we're shedding light on all the conflicts that that are happening right now between us in the world, and between us and nature. COVID, climate destabilization, whatever it is, all of it is a stage in recalibrating our perception so that we can actually see that we are all one, that there is just one sort of wave function that governs our experience, that there is actually no discrepancy between us, differences, time, space, and motion. We're going through a process of a conflict and crisis now in order to upgrade our perception. So
really to upgrade our questions. Right. Because if we have the right questions, then we can find the right answers.
I would say instead of asking how to make the world a better place, the right question to ask is how to make ourselves better so that we see a better world.
We'll have to get into that.
All right. I think
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there through the technical glitch. Thanks a lot, Chris, behind the scenes. Asaf, as always, amazing having this conversation with you every week. We will see you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern at The Great Transition. We would love to hear, if people have ideas for shows, where could they send those ideas, or how could they tell us? Just put it in the comments.
Yeah, we're looking.
Tell
at
us
the
what
comments.
you want to. Tell us what you want to. What would interest you to discuss. We have so much we want to share. But it'd be really interesting to hear what's on your minds.
If you want the Kabbalistic perspective on something specific, especially if it has to do with stuff that's happening right now in the world, we will be down to doing that. So, yes.
See y'all next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Seth.
after face, race after race, from one cage to another. Mask after mask, task after task, lost in the sands.
Through you there's a cry, through you there's a light, a place to be discovered. Through you there's a way, together we pray to rise.
To see the face of love through your eyes. Together as one, and now we rise. And every word an echo from the skies. Breaking the walls, hearts unite.
Of me, through you I find my flaws. Through there's a key, a place where we can open doors.
Together we yearn, the fire it burns, a chance to feel alive. A song from the heart, singing that love will cover our crime. To see the face of love through your eyes. Together as one.